Hello there, people of Facebook and the Living Blueprints community. This is Linda Stacy, and it is Monday, the day that many of us have returned to work or regular life, or life is beginning to ramp up again as we know it in our JOBs or whatever it is that we're returning to after a holiday break. As I mentioned in a Facebook post, I'm going to be going over how I am kind of taking new control. This happens every year, right? Of all the things that I have going on. And there are a lot of things going on. So just in getting started though, I wanted to remind folks that all of these videos are on YouTube, and I would love it if you would subscribe. This just helps to kind of raise the visibility. It also puts them in your inbox when the new ones get posted. So they are, of course, forever at Facebook, but they're also numbered on YouTube with some description. So yeah, and if you're watching this later on, if you hit type in hashtag replay, that would be cool just to see who watched the video, and hopefully this is helpful to some of you. So I'm gonna talk about ways that I keep the many things going forward in my life without making me crazy. And I do have a bit more of a script tonight. And also, you know, avoiding chaos, but also I'm all about increasing the capacity for coolness and satisfaction, joy and fulfillment. It's all of those things. I wanted to say a little something about comparisonitis. I think that I just pick up on it sometimes based on what people will say around me, or even when they're visiting my house or whatever. You know, we all choose different things to focus on, and anything that I'm explaining about my life is only in an effort to help people who also want to have more satisfaction and fulfillment. It is in no way to say that what I'm doing is the right way or the best way. It's just that I figured out to have more satisfaction in my life as is defined by me. So I try to describe the underlying premise and framework that allows that to happen. And hopefully you can apply it to whatever the things are that you choose for awesomeness in your life. So again, comparing yourself to others, you know, can be very toxic, whether it's me or anyone else. And it can also really block you from picking up things that could be of real value to you. You know, 10, 12 years ago, I felt like everything in my life was an effing mess. And I feel like I've gotten a lot of things in better track. And I still struggle though, and worry that, you know, am I really doing the right things? And where am I really going to be in 5 or 10 years or whatever? Again, this is all towards joy and satisfaction. Negative self-talk is what keeps us from being able to achieve true awesomeness. So as much as you can work on not repeating negatives to yourself, the better off you will be. And also the less judgment. I mean, this has been a huge one for me, letting go of judgment of myself and of others over the last year. That is huge too. It keeps me from being defensive. It just helps me be more me and focused on what I want in my life and not this comparison and the judgment. Also, everything that I'm talking about, again, as it applies to what I've got going on, I hope that you'll be able to apply it to your life. This could also apply to work. So we all have lots of things that we're managing, and we might just be managing lots of things at work. So how can we do that better with greater success and more ease? So if you have a really hard time understanding how any of my examples can apply to your life, I mean, I was talking to someone who was, 15, 20 years younger than I this weekend, and her blocks were way different from mine just because of the point of her life. So, it can really vary, and sometimes it can be hard to see where the parallels are, but I'm happy to help anyone on the sidelines without exposing who you are. You can private message me. And I could use it as an example maybe here, but not tell everyone who you are if you had anything like that. Also, today's content is a little bit like what I did on what is numbered 005 in YouTube. It was how to feel more in control when I talked a lot about calendaring. That video is kind of in bad shape because I think I had to save it in some funky way. It's kind of hard to watch. So I'm going to be going over some of that. As far as my stuff and the examples that I'm using, this is about my business, Living Blueprints. This is about my full-time job. This is about my primary relationship, my husband, and also my social life. And I have household responsibilities. This isn't like everything, but this is a lot of things that I try to kind of keep going without freaking out. Another quick reminder, 10% of the population is kind of like born organized, or I don't know if they're actually born organized, but there seems to be this wiring that can happen where some people just kind of keep it together really tight sometimes, you know, we might classify them as anal or something like that. But it's unfortunate if one of those people is your boss, or if you are like that and like no one around you is like that, and you just can't understand why people can't seem to get their shit together. So there are people for whom, like, what I talk about, they're like, what's the big deal here? And I'm like, hello. Anyway, so ultimately, our working styles are also quite different. So whether you're at work or in your household, you know, how you and your spouse can interact with your things can be quite different. All this stuff is just an effort to say, you know, we're just seeking improvement. Everyone's doing really well already. And I think that we're made to expand and grow. So that is what all of this is about. These tips are designed to help you get out of your own way and create more ease in your life. So just getting started with some of the things I've been doing. We came back from our trip away for the holidays, and on the plane back, I kind of did a little bit of like strategizing in terms of these big buckets in my life. As I already mentioned, it's the full-time job, the business, my life in terms of my social life and my relationship and my household responsibilities. And I did a bunch of brainstormings, and I would really consider that kind of a strategy session. And I feel like businesses, companies, teams sometimes miss this piece. And a strategy session can be super important. And I'm not really doing one tonight, but I kind of just brainstormed about different categories. If anyone ever wanted to do this type of strategy session with me, I'd absolutely be willing to. But it's definitely something I do with teams inside companies because, again, it can be missing and it can be a big problem. Anyway, so then this last Sunday, after I'd kind of done some big time strategizing, like for example, one of the things with Living Blueprints is that I have a goal of having 3 to 6 speaking engagements in Q1. And that could be a webinar, that could be a podcast, that could be, but something that someone else is hosting, not what I'm doing here. So like, that's one of my goals, right? Or one of the things I'm trying to get done in Q1. So it's like, how am I going to make that happen? So that's like one area is like speaking gigs and like what I have to do every day to kind of make that happen. But anyway, I did a little bit of brainstorming in a notebook, and it's not really key that you can see this, but I just kind of blocked off the main areas that I had strategized. So I've got the speaking gigs as one area. I've got these Facebook Lives as a second one. I've got my newsletter campaign, what I call Nurture. I also am starting a business with my husband because, you know, we need to be doing more things. I've also got chores in one of these chunks, and I've also got research because I need to research a bunch of associations in terms of my outreach for the rest of the year. So these are just 6 big areas that I'm trying to move forward. And your big areas could be completely different. You know, you might have different projects you're working on at work, different things you're trying to do at home. So whatever those things are. And on Sunday, again, just yesterday, I spent maybe an hour with this, kind of looking to see what are the very next things I need to do for each of these. Just brainstorming like what makes sense. And like for the speaking gigs, some of the things I need to do, like the low-hanging fruit, are reach out to people that I've connected with and had good engagement with over the last year to say, hey, do you know of any other associations that do webinars? Because those might not take as long for me to actually get onto. So, you know, first quarter, I'm going to ask them, what other associations do you belong to? Do they do webinars? Do you think this would be a fit for the content that you saw? So those are easy things that I can begin to execute like this week. So I made a list of the things that like are low-hanging. What are the very first things I can do for each of these things? And then I brought it to the calendar, and I hope this doesn't make anyone crazy, but this is really, you know, this is what happens when people make huge things happen. They get more deliberate about this stuff, right? So as far as my calendar goes, I've talked about this before. This is the planner pad. I am not committed to any particular calendar. And people have said to me before, you know, maybe you should create your own calendar. It could be like a profit center for you. I know that 2 things. One is I'm always changing the way I want to approach my stuff. So I'm not sure I'm going to be using this planner next year. And I also know that everyone is like that, and our needs change over time. And some of these systems, I mean, I even have another one over here that someone gave me once, like not realizing what I actually do. It's this productivity notebook, and each page has got kind of like these sections that you fill out, and it's too definite for me. So anyway, I'm not married to any particular tool, just one that actually allows you to get things done as you need them. So, you know, I take pen to paper after I've done this initial, you know, like brainstorming, what are my next actions? I look at this and I think, okay, what are my hard appointments? I've got stuff that happens with the day job that clearly, I mean, I don't have myself scheduled for any of living blueprints during the workday, right? That doesn't really make sense. But I have highlighted pre-work time. I have about 30-45 minutes that I spend on this before I leave for work. I also have train time designated, so I've highlighted that. These are places where I can actually chunk in what I want to do. The main 9 to 5 is kind of blocked by my day job. I can't really do anything, you know, when I'm sleeping. Obviously, I also need time to get ready for work in the morning and time for downtime too. But I really try to highlight where the open chunks are for the things that are a little more like elective, things that aren't like hard set in my calendar. And then I just started kind of plotting where and how I would do those various things. Some of them have to be done today. For example, I wanted to flesh out what I was going to say here on Facebook Live today. So I did that this morning around 8 in the morning. Mondays, I happen to work from home, and Mondays, I also don't start until 11, which is a huge, awesome thing that I managed to work out about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago at work. So I don't start until 11 on Mondays, which allows me, I spent time, again, fleshing this out this morning, and also cleaning the house a little bit. I spent probably an hour and a half doing some stuff around the house. And again, this is my choice. I want to do those things in my house. If you want someone else to do those things in your house, I mean, whatever the things are you want to fit in those time chunks. I really get concerned sometimes that folks think that I think that their categories need to be your categories, and I totally don't feel that way. You know, we bought this house brand new. I have some feelings about the way that I'd like it to stay. So I'm doing most of that work myself, and it's fine. As long as I can continue to keep doing it, I will. And as long as it makes sense. But anyway, so that had to happen today, right? I've got other things up here that can kind of happen whenever. And I've got a few things up here that don't require as much mental energy. For example, I have to research a couple of associations. Research means I need to find who the meeting planner is. I need to find out when their meeting is, and I need to enter it into my CRM, my customer relationship management tool. That does not take me a lot of brain power, probably because of a lot of what I do during the workday. It's just kind of a rote type of thing. So I can do it at night when my energy is not as good. So I did the fleshing out stuff, which requires more creativity in the morning, because I know that about myself. So I definitely try to fit these things in as it makes sense to what I know about myself. Another thing is, you know, as you do this more and more, you get a sense for how long things take for you to do. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur. She's trying to create a lot of content, and she really struggles over writing her articles. And I asked her, I said, do you have any sense of how long it actually takes you? And she said she really doesn't. And one of the blessings that's inside this curse of my commute, which I no longer feel as a curse, is that I got really good at figuring out how long it took me to do things. I mean, I can kind of flesh out the main outline of a blog post in one train ride, which is about 35-40 minutes. I can clean it up in a second train ride. Now, in the future, I may not be on a train, but at least I know how much time to block for these types of activities. So knowing how much time things takes can really help, no matter what you're doing, even getting ready in the morning, doing the dishes, whatever it is. I mean, we often make our tasks much bigger, or, you know, they become this big, hairy, scary things when they're really not that big and hairy. And I'm actually going to talk about that on my next live, which is Wednesday night. We're actually going to do, I think, chapter 6, which is the about timing techniques. So I'll say more about that in that session. So anyway, I'm just looking over my handouts. Oh, I also wanted to say, so for work, I have a number of things this week that I need to get done for the day job. I'm working on a newsletter that I want to go out next Tuesday. I need to do a resource evaluation by Thursday, and I need to prepare a handout for some training I'm doing on Thursday. I've kind of plotted these things in the work calendar. And the way my work goes is that my main job is replying to requests for information. I'm an information professional. So a lot of my day is reactive. And a lot of people out there, even if your job isn't like mine, I know that you are in reaction mode all the time. You are putting out fires, people are asking you for things, you're constantly being interrupted. It's like the way that work is these days. So that is how I've been working for the last 17 years at this job. So these tasks, though, I know that I can eke out the right amount of time to get these things done. And I plotted them that by Tuesday, I'd like to have this thing done. By Wednesday, I'd like to have this thing done. And that helps me stay on track with these projects that are going. But really, my main job there is to provide assistance as is needed by the consulting staff. So absolutely use these techniques at work as well. So I want to see if there's anything else I have here. I really feel there are so many bits of dead time that we can really take advantage of. And by just being a little bit more planful, I know that's not really a word, you're setting yourself up for success. You're pre-paving. It's much nicer to put a little bit of energy in at the front end than to kind of lose energy at the back end. Either way, it's work. This took me, like I said, like an hour to kind of plot this out yesterday. And every morning I'll kind of go in and reassess. And I'm not going to freak out if it doesn't go like this. That is one of the biggest things that happens when people try to be a little bit more mindful or planful about their lives, and it's like, well, it's not working, it's not the point. All the big things that I talked about, the big categories, they're moving forward. You know what happens in these situations? I talked about the speaking gigs. I'll do all this outreach to specific people, and then people that I haven't even been thinking about will start emailing me. There's something like about speaking gigs. There's something serendipitous about setting your intention and creating a plan behind it. And then the stuff kind of works itself out, even if it isn't 100% according to the plan. I heard an awesome speaker recently, Rob, and I can't think of his last name, but he is the person who found and killed Osama bin Laden. And he said, it's about being prepared. It's not having this multi-step plan that you're going to be married to. It's just about over preparing. And so this kind of allows me to prepare and be mindful and get my game together. And I just a little bit of sharing, I still every day wake up, and I swear that this has been the case since I was probably 3. A little vulnerability moment with some amount of anxiety and a little bit of fear about the day ahead every single morning. Still, it's very, very rare when I don't. And lately I've been starting a writing practice around this. And I have found, though, that whenever I do more of this, it helps. I'm usually kind of over it within 20 or 30 minutes, but it's kind of the way that I'm wired. So a lot of what I do is in order to help me, move forward in a very positive way when it really feels like every morning that I'm not feeling so positive. So, I'm kind of sharing that because I know a lot of people suffer with anxiety and negative self-talk. And I think that we can still work through and be awesome. And I pray for the day when I don't wake up that every morning this way, but I'm getting more comfortable with the fact that this is who I am, and hopefully it lends itself to other good things. I don't know. Certainly empathy. I have a lot of empathy towards these things. So again, I encourage folks to, spend a little time, maybe just one little element of what I talked about would make sense for you. Again, I find myself about every quarter doing a bigger strategy session like I was talking about that I did on the plane a couple weeks ago. And then weekly going through and trying to, see what makes sense to move forward in those spaces. And also leaving chunks of time that are empty. We need downtime, whatever that means for you. Nourish yourself. Just sleep, sit, veg in front of the television, but don't let it get, don't let it get to the point where it's actually bringing you down. But we also need time to respond to the outreach that we've done, or the, things are going to come up that we don't plan for. So we can't overbook ourselves either. Schedule yourself according to what makes sense. Is it 60%? Is it 75% of your time that you actually want to jam up? So again, take any portion that you want. I always suggest that people treat all of this as experimental. And so you're just observing and seeing if you notice a difference after several days. How did it feel to do something a little bit differently? And then again, coming from the way that I'm wired, don't lambast yourself if it doesn't go 100% well. It's all more about the bigger goals, the things that you're driving forward, the way that you're meant to serve here on the planet, the way that you're meant to grow and live and expand. So I'm excited to know if anyone applies any of these things. Next Monday, I'm going to come back and I'm going to review what happened in my week. I'll talk about how it went, and maybe, again, if any of you want help with either a strategy session or to think about how you want to move some things forward, please be in touch, because sometimes it's hard to, relate really closely to the examples that someone else is giving. I mentioned, again, Wednesday night, I'm going to come back around 7 o'clock to do chapter 6 of Optimized You, which I've buried on my desk here. So we'll do chapter 6, which is timing techniques and such. And again, there's more on YouTube. They're all numbered. I'll be posting this tomorrow, which is in my calendar for the early morning pre-work time. It does not take me a lot of brain power. My brain isn't usually working quite well. It's 5:45 in the morning, but I can get my YouTube video, or this video, uploaded to YouTube because it's a little more mechanical, a little less strategic and creative. So, you know, use some of these ideas maybe and create awesomeness in your world, okay? Hope you all have a great rest of the week. Good night.